So hi everyone, welcome to video 2. My name is Lynn and I'm going to show you some of the basic search features and the power that is automatic term mapping. So let's get started. So first I'll be showing you how PubMed is different than Google. I'll show you how to use quoted phrases effectively, how to use those what we call Boolean operators to sound smart. Basically that means using words like and, or not in the search. And lastly, showing you how to access search details. Afterwards, you'll get some practice in creating a search strategy using automatic term mapping and some of the features we talked about. So, accessing PubMed, as you learned in video 1, you want to go through the Norris Medical Library website, and I'm going to start on the Year 1 Medical Student Guide. So here we are in the Medical Student's Year 1 Guide, and under the Journal Article Databases box, we'll click on PubMed. This takes us to a page. Now this doesn't necessarily look like a link, but it is. And here we are in PubMed. So this looks like a search box because it is. And I think when we see search boxes, because we use Google so often, we think that everything's going to behave like Google, which is what I do. It makes sense. But I want to emphasize at the beginning how this is different from Google. So let me show you what I mean. So if I did a quoted phrase search, so if I wanted to look up the information on AIDS, drugs, and breastfeeding, that could be a really effective Google search. And why it's effective is that when I put something in quotes, I look up that phrase. So instead of getting everything online about AIDS, I'm only going to get things that use the phrase AIDS drugs. And the same with breastfeeding. Instead of getting everything on the internet about breasts, which could get messy, I'm only going to get things online that are about breastfeeding. So again, a really great Google search. But if I put that same search into PubMed, I only get 3 results. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are over 23 million citations in PubMed. So the fact that I'm only getting 3 articles on something as significant as AIDS, drugs, and breastfeeding kind of should set off some warnings. And what's happening here is that I'm deactivating automatic term mapping. By using quotes, I'm telling PubMed only search for these phrases, and that can be very debilitating to using PubMed. So instead of using a quoted search, I like to encourage people instead to speak Tarzan to PubMed. So my search ends up being AIDS, drugs, breastfeeding. Now I get 472 results. It's a much more effective search. And you might be wondering why that's happening. If I scroll down, I have a little search details box here on the lower right. If I click see more, it's showing me what PubMed does. And this is actually pretty cool stuff. I mean, I'm nerding out, but that doesn't mean you have to nerd out too. But what's happening is PubMed recognizes that I looked up the terms AIDS, drugs, and it's kind of correcting my work for me. And I kind of give it this nerdy voice of like, ooh, I think you meant anti-HIV agents. So what's happening is it's recognizing the words that I'm putting in, and then it's mapping them to the controlled vocabulary that's in PubMed. It does a lot of the work for you. The only way to use this, though, is to let it do its thing. And so I really encourage people to avoid using quoted phrases when searching PubMed. I could use a Boolean operator in this search because I'm looking for articles about AIDS, drugs, and breastfeeding. But you'll see I'll get the same number of results, all 472 same results. And it's because when using automatic term mapping, and is always implied. If I type in terms, it's assuming that I want to find articles that talk about all the concepts that I'm searching. So you can use the ands, you cannot use the ands, whatever is easier for you. So let's see, what if I wanted to do my search, but I wanted to look for AIDS drugs or one particular AIDS drugs, HIV drug, I mean. So let's add a term, let's add lamivudine. And so here's where I would want to use a Boolean operator. So I want articles that talk about AIDS, drugs, or this drug specifically. I'm also going to add parentheses to this. And parentheses in search terms work just like parentheses back in mathematics, back in Algebra 1. So what PubMed is going to recognize is I'm looking for something about AIDS, drugs, or this specific drug, and breastfeeding. So it's going to do this search before adding breastfeeding to the search. So let's try that. And you'll see now, by adding that drug name, I got a few more results because I added this term to the search using or. Or often will add more articles to your search whereas adding and terms will usually add less. Some people ask me about when to use not. And the way you'd want to use not is, let's say you were interested in all age drugs except for lamivudine. So this is where I could put not and hit search. And I get 424, so I get less. And that's a way of using not. I strongly caution against using not in PubMed. You can imagine there might be articles that talk about several anti-HIV agent drugs and just mention this one as one of those. That doesn't mean I'm no longer interested in that article. I could be interested in the rest of the drugs that are talked about. So use a lot of caution when using not, but I'm all about giving information, so I wanted you to know that that's an option to use when you search PubMed. Okay, so let's give you time to now practice using PubMed using automatic term mapping. Let's take this scenario. For your RSP, you are working with a mentor who has set up a cohort study to examine the effects of Los Angeles traffic pollution on adults ages 18 to 35 years old. Your mentor has requested that you pull together recent articles and information on the effects of pollution, specifically on blood pressure. So this is a scenario where PubMed could be really helpful. You can gather some articles and some recent primary research and really wow your mentor. So the first thing I want you to do is to look at the scenario and create a list of potential keywords to search. I then want you to enter those keywords into PubMed. So here's what I came up with. My first concept is pollution, and my second concept is blood pressure. So now let's go into PubMed, and using the automatic term mapping search, speaking Tarzan, let's just say pollution, blood pressure. And I get 534 results. So now scroll down, and let's get those search details. We'll click See More. And then if I copy and paste this, I get how I searched PubMed. So I see that pollution didn't do much for me, but look at all these different terms that PubMed generated for blood pressure. Now looking at the search details that you created, what are some other terms that you can add to your search? For example, are there other phrases you could combine using the OR Boolean operator? So let me show you what I did. So for pollution, I thought adding traffic or diesel could really generate more articles. And instead of just blood pressure, I can add hypertension. So let's go back to PubMed and see what this does for my search. So in parentheses, pollution or traffic or diesel. And then again, the and is assumed. I can do blood pressure or hypertension. So you see how just adding a couple more phrases with the OR Boolean operator, I get now over 2,000 articles that might be helpful. Now I know what you're thinking, 2,000 is a lot of articles. You might not want to go through all 2,000, and I will be showing you how to filter down those results to get it to be a more manageable task. But before we get into filters, I want to address another way of searching PubMed, and that's by using the controlled vocabulary mesh. So come check out video number 3 with me, rhyming.